Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tsepo Mohapi once more with Life in Perspective. Life in Perspective. So some of you might be asking yourself a question. Life in Perspective. Why did he choose such a term, such a word? Why did he choose such a phrase for his page? And it really comes a long way for me to have decided to take this, and I have attempted to give definition of what I refer to when I'm talking about life, and what do I actually mean when I'm talking about life. And part of the reason why I'm doing the show today is to also just backtrack a bit and shed some light and recap, and to just put you into light in as far as what is the real meaning behind the page itself, and what is it that we're intending to achieve, and what are we trying to get to. And I think it's important for us to understand. So from the very beginning, when I started this show, even some of the sessions I do on radio, which some I've recorded and I've put them on the page, part of what I've been talking about is the meaning of life. What is life? What is life? And what I've done where life is concerned is I have gone as far back as I possibly could when it comes to the definition of life. You see, life for a lot of people can be defined as living. It could be defined as breathing. It could be defined as eating. It could be defined as being able to be mobile. It could be defined as having a heartbeat and blood flow, having a pulse. Life could be defined by a lot of things. Life could be defined as survival. It could be defined as you getting across living life and finding different ways of how to improve yourself, how to get ahead in life, how to do good and how to do well. So there could be a lot of definitions around what life is. So what I then did is I took it upon myself to look at as many definitions as I possibly could, and took these definitions and probably just summarize my understanding of all these different definitions that are coming across. And I then came with a definition that says life is a system. Life is a system. Life is a system that is capable or able to perform duties. And some of those duties that you would look at duties like growth. Growth is evidence that there is life. Consumption, which we would call eating. Consumption is not just eating. Consumption could mean a variety of things. We consume things. And when we consume those things is evidence that there is life. And part of that means also that if there is life with consumption, we could use that as evidence. And also you will find that there's evidence in many other things in the world and in the system of life that are evidence that a person is alive. And one of the things that I want us to understand is that if we say life is a system that is able to perform duties, what are those duties? Like I said, I've mentioned two of them. There could be a lot more of those. But if you look at it and begin to try and understand, you will then realize that everything that we've ever tried to define as life, having a heartbeat is part of a system of the body. It's part of a system of a body. And that system of a body has several things that underpin its existence. For an example, you would find that for a person to be able to breathe, they need to have lungs. And some of those who are in the medical field will call it a cardiovascular system. It's a system. It's a cardiovascular system because it includes a lot of things, a lot of components in it that are making this thing a machinery that is able to perform certain duties. And in this particular case, the duty is to breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide obviously being what you would call waste that is not supposed to remain in the human being, it's supposed to come out. You look at plants are breathing in carbon dioxide and they're breathing out oxygen, which is what we need. So we have a symbiotic relationship with plants, whereby there's a dependency where we need to breathe out the carbon dioxide and they need to breathe, they breathe out oxygen while they breathe in carbon dioxide. We absorb, we consume oxygen, and we release carbon dioxide. The plants consume carbon dioxide and release oxygen. So you will find that even in the system of the ecosystem on its own, because even your environment is part of what we call the ecosystem. That's part of a system. So part of that system includes a lot of other things that are interdependent, that are dependent on each other. The existence of one is important to another. You will see even how human beings consume the energy of the sun. We can consume the energy of the sun through our skin, which we call vitamin D. We can also consume the energy of the sun through consumption via eating, where we eat vegetables that have consumed the sun via their what you call it, chlorophyll in their on the surface of their you would call them of their bodies, so to speak. They have chlorophyll. Chlorophyll absorbs that sun and it photosynthesizes through a process called photosynthesis, and that produces your glucose. It produces all the things that a human being needs when they eat green stuff for them to be able to live. So there is a relationship there as well. Very, very important for us to understand that you also have the relationship with the sun. You also have the relationship with the moon. All of those are part of what we call a system. So you can go from the smallest of the system and go as far as possible to the largest of the systems. Mainly because every single thing that is out there that is created to be part of a system of life. And that system of life is important. So you will find that the sun has its own life. And within the life of a sun, there are certain cycles that it goes through. The moon has a life, and part of the life of the moon is to go through certain cycles and to go through certain things. But each of these are performing their own duties. They are performing several duties. So you'll find an animal, whether it's a wild animal, a lion, or any other type of animal, that is also having its own life system, but it is also performing certain duties. You will find that you will look at different animals even across the ecosystem. You look at different animals, you will realize each of these animals have specific functions. They have specific duties they are delivering. Some of them are predators. They go, they hunt, and they destroy and whatever that is it that they do. But then you will find some of those animals that are scavengers, that would come and then clean up whatever these other big predators have left, because part of their job is to eat carcasses, is to eat things that are left behind, and they eat everything and they leave nothing behind. And you could possibly perceive them as cleaners. They clean the environment, because if those carcasses sit there and they accumulate maggots and all of it, it can breed sickness. It can breed a lot of other things. So you begin to realize that every single thing that is there for a reason. It is there for a reason. Some people don't even understand why the flies are there. The flies are there because they need to come and lay eggs that will produce maggots for things to decay. So sometimes you will realize that every single thing that is there for a purpose. The mosquito has a purpose. You find there's a lot of other animals that we look at and wonder, why on earth is this animal there? It is part of the system of life, and they are there to perform certain duties. And when some of these little animals do not actually perform their duties, it can actually have a very, very serious consequences to the existence of life, to the continuing of life, because it could breed sickness, it could breed disease, it could breed infections, it could breed a lot of other things that are detrimental to the continuation of the life of the system of life. And that is part of the reason why sometimes we find situations where in several environments certain sicknesses and diseases can be breeded because of that. So if you go, for an example, to the philosophers and you try and understand philosophers and try to understand what they are saying, you will realize that everything that people are talking about and people that are saying, whether it's philosophy, whether it's motivation, whether it's this or that, it falls under what I call the pillars that underpin life. The pillars that underpin life. And even if you were to evaluate and categorize some of the things that some of the wise people say, whether they are gurus or whatever you want to call them, they could be rabbis, they could be all different types of things, sheikhs, you can call them whatever it is, philosophers and all these big minds that are out there that are saying stuff, whether it's academic, whether it's philosophical, whatever in whatever field that it's in, whatever it is that they are saying, it's actually falling under the pillars that I call pillars that underpin the existence of life. And it's very, very important for us to understand this, because what it means then is you will begin to understand why I then took, out of all these definitions that I got about life, I then decided to call the life as a system that's capable of performing duties. But over and above that, there are pillars that I've been talking about throughout my sessions, where I talk about pillars that underpin life. And there could be more, but I chose to limit it to the three, because close to 80% of a lot of things that are happening in terms of what we describe as principles of life, they are actually governed within these pillars. And the first pillar that we discussed when we started, we spoke about the pillar of reproduction. And secondly, we spoke about the pillar of adaptation. The last one that we spoke about was the pillar of response to stimuli or stimuli. Response to stimuli or stimuli. Now, if you look at reproduction, you begin to understand that everything that has ever happened in the world, or a lot of stuff that has ever happened in the world, the continuation and the survival of the species, of the different species, had to do with reproduction. Part of the reason why there is reproduction to start with is for species to thrive, is for species to continue existing, so that even if they are endangered species, if they continue to reproduce, they will continue to exist. So it is part of the pillars that are underpinning life, in as far as the sustenance of life, the continuation of life. And this is important for us to understand, because everything that we can ever know about people. Now I'm going to give a series of examples. Reproduction is not only limited to us being able to reproduce physically through procreation or whatever the case might be. It is not only limited to that. But it is also not only are we supposed to have babies. You find plants can produce seed and create plants after themselves, produce after their own kind. You will find that animals can produce, can give birth to young, and they can reproduce and they can have calves, they can have, they are young, and human beings as well can reproduce and have children. And that's how we have managed to actually maintain the existence and the continuation of the species. Now, with that, you will realize reproduction also can go to a mental level. How is reproduction important at the mental level? Reproduction is important at the mental level because of how civilizations have developed over time, how human beings have had the ability to transfer information from one generation to another, how innovation and all of these other things that people have come up with even in the past that have been captured in writing, that people are able, later generations are able to access, because that information was documented. The people documenting those things is part of what we call reproduction, because they are taking their minds, they are putting it on paper. They are taking their minds, they are reproducing it in a form of innovation. They are taking their minds, they are reproducing in the form of other technological creations or other different types of creations in different fields. It could be in the medical fields, where they break ground in understanding how the heart of a human being works. That information is passed on from that generation that discovered this thing and began to learn more, and they gave it to the next generation. The next generation takes that thing and they embellish the idea and give it more to it than what was understood before. And we become more sophisticated with time in terms of how we are dealing with stuff, because that information becomes more from one generation to another. And when generations fail to learn from each other, the likelihood is that there is not going to be much continuation. There's not going to be much growth. There's not going to be much sophistication in those particular elements. And that becomes important for us to understand, because then we limit the growth of the life system. We limit the growth of the human species. We limit the growth of even other species. Now, look at, for an example, on the mental level, how the whale is able to use more than 20% or approximately 20% of its cerebral capacity. And because of its ability to having done that, it is able to actually get into a space where there are certain things that are inherent within its physical body because of its mental capacity. Like, for an example, it has a built-in sonar. It is able to sense and pick up position and objects within or other species within its space, and it's able to tell where they are. And it's able to see beyond what the eye can see because of the sonar that it has. And it's important for us to understand this. But look at how a human being with only 9% of its cerebral capacity, what a human being has done throughout civilizations, how we have developed, how we have created aeroplanes, how we have created automobiles, how we have created technology, how we have created other things, even in the philosophical space, our developments in the medical space, how there's groundbreaking stuff that human beings have discovered over time, how we've discovered things and gone back into history, how archaeology, geology, meteorology, and all these other studies that, zoology and all these other things that human beings have discovered, even about other species, how human beings have actually developed through construction, development, and merchant and economy and all these other things that human beings have actually come up with. We have built so much with just this little cerebral manifestation. 9%, only 9%, and we've actually managed to do so much. Now, what is important for us to also get is there is an element of reproduction that is at a spiritual level as well. That when spiritual knowledge is attained, when spiritual knowledge is achieved, spiritual knowledge has the ability to catapult human beings to levels of functionality and capability that are beyond what we might necessarily be used to, what we might necessarily be understanding at that point in time. Now, what then that means is that whatever generations discover, when they pass on that information to the next generation is able to build from that information and do a lot better moving forward. And it becomes important. Why the pillar of reproduction becomes important is to say, if this generation does not learn from the next generation, and from the previous generation, and develop from what it has learned from the previous generation to give to the next generation. Life is like a baton that generations give to one another. Whatever we learn now, that baton we need to pass to the next generation. And that's how it's supposed to be. And our desire to want to learn from our predecessors so that we can do better in our time is very, very important in how we can function optimally as human beings. The pillar of reproduction, very, very important. And everything that you have ever come across, you will see a lot of philosophical quotes, a lot of motivational quotes, and a lot of things that people say. You will find if you were to try and classify them, they fall under these three categories: reproduction, adaptation, response to stimuli. That's exactly where they fall into. Now, if you look at adaptation, everything that we have ever known as human beings, even our survival instincts and our ability to navigate our environments and be able to do good where we are, depending, you could be in China, it could be US, different types of environment, different types of economies, different types of landscapes, different types of structures that we have learned as human beings to be able to survive in those spaces. You see how human beings have evolved over time in terms of geographical positions, how human beings have migrated into different areas. If you study where human beings come from and how they migrated throughout the different areas to populate the rest of the world, you will begin to realize that human beings have a unique capability to adapt. Not just human beings, but other species as well. How they've moved and how their ecosystems have changed over time and how they had to evolve to develop instincts, sometimes even physical attributes that would allow them to survive into those environments. Why? Because human beings are created and other species are created to adapt for their own survival, because a species fails to survive and continue to thrive if it cannot adapt to its own environment. And that becomes important. That's why you will find that some animals, when they cannot adapt to a certain environment, they will migrate. They will do what we call migration. They will move from one spot to another and go to places where they will actually be able to thrive. And it's important for us to understand, because even moving and migration is one of those laws that are within the pillar of adaptation. It's important for us to understand that, because it's important. Now, if you look at response to stimuli, everything when it comes to us being able to do better for ourselves, being able to grow, being able to do certain things in life that are meant to move us to the next level has everything to do with us having to have response to stimuli, and our understanding of how we can grow ourselves and develop ourselves so that we can do better and be able to be fortified in the mind, to be fortified in the body, to be fortified even in the spirit, for us to be able to reproduce, to adapt, and to respond to stimuli. Those things are very important for us to understand, that it goes with what we develop in our body, what we develop in our minds, and what we develop where? In our spirit. And it's important to understand that. And you will realize that human beings over time, we have neglected certain aspects of our creations, and we have not look at what we have done with our understanding of the physical body. And we have realized that the physical body is very key in how functionary a person can be and in how effective a human being can be. If you take care of your physical body can give you optimum. If you take care of your mind, we've learned this throughout time, and psychologists and neurologists and other people that study the mind have gathered so much information on how the mind works, and we have capitalized on the power of the mind the same way we have capitalized on the power of the body. Now, the other thing is the spirit. Now, you will find that religious organizations and different other organizations, whether they are spiritual people or whatever the case might be, they have gone out of their way to try and study this space for people to begin to have a better understanding of their spiritual existence, so that we can actually tap into the power of our spirit. And this is very important for us to understand, because this is what actually governs and underpins what we call life. And this is why I speak about life in perspective, to say we are looking at life from a perspective that allows us to have better understanding of where we are and where we are going as human beings, and as other species as well thrive. We can learn from those species and how they actually grow and how they actually develop. And those systems are meant to teach us. There are things we need to learn from other life forms that are important. And I always use a term that is called anthropomorphic. This term simply speaks about how lower life forms are meant to give certain important information for higher life forms to be able to understand it. And it's all about information. And you will find even in our idioms, we do use things like as brave as a lion, or as tough as a lion, as strong as an ox. There are certain terms that we use that we link to certain animals, because those animals have developed those attributes to a level where you can call it mastery. They have mastered the art of exhibiting and manifesting that attribute to a level where when we think of that particular attribute, we cannot accredit it to anything but that animal. So in as much as some of these species have mastered, because they have done the same thing over and over again to a level where it is known that when you are looking for a certain attribute, you can find it in a specific species. And it's important, not only in as far as functions and attributes are concerned, but also in as far as systems are concerned as well. There is a lot for us to learn on other different species that is available for us to be able to actually learn, which is why I use the term anthropomorphic, because we can learn even with physical things. Physical things can also teach us of how to understand things that are spiritual. We are able to understand spiritual things because of what we see physically happening around us. Because if we understand that our origin as people is also spiritual, it means there is a world that is spiritual, that this physical world is mirrored after, which means when you look at this physical world, there is a strong reflection of what is in the spiritual that you see in the natural. And it's important for us to understand, because you begin to actually understand why some people have dreams. Are dreams natural? Are dreams a manifestation of your mind and your environment and everything? That not always. Yes, there is a lot of times where dreams are a manifestations of the type of programs that you watch, and through your subconscious mind, it's able to play back while you are sleeping. But dreams can go beyond that. Dreams can be an element of something that is not even in your mind. It has never been in your mind at all. And it's just pure manifestation of this is how other people get innovations when they meditate or they sit and think deeply about stuff. And I've used several examples even in the past of scientists that discovered stuff. Isaac Newton is a typical example, sitting sitting under a tree reading his Bible. An apple falls from the tree, and through that he discovers what we call the three laws, Newton's laws of motion. And you find a guy like Archimedes who was trying to measure the volume of things, and he happens to sit, and while he was wondering, he decides, let me get into a bath. While he gets into a bath, he realizes the volume of the water increases when he enters the water. Guess what? Bam, light bulb moment. He realizes, I can measure my own volume using water. These are some of the things that are important for us to understand, because when we realize that there is more to a human being's existence than just physical and mental, there is a spiritual aspect to it. We will begin to realize that when we understand all three components, we are able to do well for ourselves, because the system of life is meant to create opportunities for us to be able to discover, to be able to learn, to be able to grow, and to be able to function at our best. And it's important to understand. Now, some of you might say, where is this coming from? How is it that life could have these pillars and so forth? And there is a lot of information around this, and for us to be able to understand where this particular thing is coming from. And for me, the main source of reference for this is in the Bible. If you look at Genesis chapter 1, you'll begin to understand. When you read from verses 26, where the Bible says, God said, let us make men in our own image and likeness so that they can be like us. Let them have authority and complete authority over the fish of the sea and all these other things. And in verse 27, he says, so God created man in his own image. In his own image and likeness, he created him, male and female, he created them. And then that's what I want to talk about now, which is where these three pillars that I am focusing on. Like I said, there's more pillars. But for me, I'm focusing on these three because I believe they carry at least around 80% of everything else that I believe underpins what I call the life system. And if you read, you will understand. He says, and God blessed them. And God blessed them. So after he creates them, he blesses them. And God blessed them. And he blessed them and he said, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. These are the three main components of the pillar of reproduction. Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. These are the three pillars of what? Of reproduction. And it's important. It's important for us to understand that these three aspects of reproduction are very, very critical for us to know. So let them be fruitful, let them multiply, let them fill the earth. It sounds very physical, but not only is it physical, it is also mental. You're supposed to be fruitful in the body. You're supposed to be fruitful in the body, which means your physical body must produce. Your physical body must give you output. Your physical body must give you energy, drive, all these things. It must function on your behalf. It must function to help you become better. You must multiply, which means have children. You must fill the earth, which means go all over the place and occupy land. Go all over the place and occupy places. Very, very important. The pillar of reproduction. Very, very important to understand. Then you have the second aspect of it, which is now adaptation, where you continue to say, and subdue it. Not only are you supposed to be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. And like I said, it can be in the body. Fruitful, multiply, fill the earth in the body. Fruitful, multiply, fill the earth mentally, educationally, intellectually, and otherwise. Fill the earth. Spiritual, fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. Spiritual. So every time you look at these things, look at them from these three different aspects. Physical, mental, and spiritual. Now, he says, subdue the earth. The law of, or the pillar of adaptation. He said, subdue the earth. What does subduing mean? It means using its vast resources. Using its vast resources. Whatever resources that are there. This is how you develop things like commerce. You develop things like economics. You develop things like finance. You develop things like business, industries. People have industrialized and they've done all these. Part of them doing all of that stuff has everything to do with the pillar of adaptation. People are trying to adapt by doing all these things, creating monetary systems, creating engineering systems, creating medical systems, creating all these different systems to adapt. The main point behind is to adapt. So that we can live better in our environment. When we are developing these different aspects, we are what? We are adapting. We are using all these vast resources that are available to us. And it's been given to us for us to be able to use these vast resources. The pillar of adaptation. The last one, he says, and let them have dominion. Now, let them have dominion over everything else. So this dominion, the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, the living creatures that moves upon the earth and everything else. Now, if you look at it, this is response to stimuli. This is response to stimuli, because what it means is that you need to have dominion. You need to have authority over inferior species. You need to have dominion over inferior species, not only in the physical, not only by intelligence. Now, you can tell a human being is probably, of all created things, is probably amongst the most intelligent of the creatures that God had created. Yes, the dolphin might have, the whale might have a 20% of his cerebral capacity, running. But think about it. Even with that cerebral capacity, it can't really do much in the water. But human beings have so much that is available for them. They are actually able to transcend and move into we are in the water, we are in the land, we are in the air, we are in outer space. We can transcend different dimensions because we are multidimensional as human beings. We have been given the ability to move across different dimensions of creation. Why? Because we have been created to be the most intelligent species that God has ever developed. Not intelligent by IQ only, but intelligence goes in different. Some of you who follow my page, you will know I talk about different levels of intelligence. There's intelligence that comes because you are intellectual. You are intellectual. And there's intelligence that comes because you are emotional. You have emotional intelligence. There's intelligence that comes because you are socially savvy. You have social connectivity and ability. There's different ones. There's intelligence that comes because you have instincts of survival. You are able to deal with adversity. You have adversity intelligence. And that is important for you to understand, because even intelligence has its own dimensions. Now, when we begin to understand that you have been given this authority for you to dominate these different things, you are able to do so much for yourself, because your understanding of this then puts you in a space where you realize that life has been designed for you as a person, and you've been given the tools as a human being to be able to do so much for yourself, to be able to do so much for your environment, to be able to do so much for your fellow men. And what I like about this is that you need to understand that when you are given dominion, it means you are given dominion to be able to have control, to be able to have calm, to be able to manage, to be able to facilitate, to be able to direct, to be able to channel, and to be able to manipulate certain things. Now, it's important, and manipulation, I don't mean it from a bad way. I mean it from a stance where you are able to use, like I said, in the adaptation, using the vast resources, you are able to take certain things and use them for your benefit. Like how man has discovered steel, and we are using steel to our benefit to decide to develop steels that are used in constructions, steel that are used in building of the automobile industry, the aero industry, and different other industries. And we have discovered a lot of other things that we are using for different things that we are manufacturing. Why? Because we have learned to understand the uses of the different things. And some of them will require us to chemically manipulate and do certain things to them for them to become what is usable to us. And all of that has everything to do with having dominion. It has everything to do with having dominion. And human beings have been given a unique ability to have dominion. And the question that we need to always ask ourselves as human beings is to say, now that I know all of this, what's in it for me? Why did I come here? Why did I end up in this earth? Why do I find myself here? And you need to find within the system of life, like the birds that fly the air, they know what duties to perform. Like the eagle that soars in the skies, they know what duties to perform. Like the alpha male lion that tracks the landscape and knows exactly what his function is. Human beings also need to find the same. What is your function? What is your purpose? Because once you get into that space, you begin to understand that life, in its perspective, that understanding of the perspective of life can equip you so much as a human being that you are able to do so much more. So life is a system that is able to perform duties, but those duties are performed optimally by those who will understand what it means to look at life in perspective. Thank you so much.